Welcome to the Appliance Educator podcast, presented by Z-Line Kitchen and Bath, attainable luxury designed in Lake Tahoe. On today's episode of the podcast, we're joined by Aerys from Herbology NV to talk plants with your two favorite plant daddies. All right, everybody, welcome back to the Appliance Educator podcast. We've got another awesome episode lined up for you today. As usual, it's your fearless leader here, DP, and I'm joined by my partner in crime, Nick.
Hey, that's me.
And we are joined today by Aerys from Herbology. Welcome.
Hello, thank you for having me.
Yes, and for those of you out there, this is actually a retake of our Lost Forgotten episode, but we're especially excited because Nick and I are both plant boys, plant guys, plant dads.
Plant zaddies.
Oh, wow. So we've got the true expert in the house, though. Aerys, welcome. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you. I'm honored by that title.
Excellent. Yeah, and you know, Nick and I both have a huge affinity for plants. We're both. I think my indoor collection's somewhere in the two dozen at this point. So on my way out from beginner to intermediate.
Oh, good.
So,
Yeah, I'm right behind you on that one too, and probably close to 2 dozen.
Yeah.
As well.
Nice.
Yeah.
I think you guys had a pretty small collection last time I was here, but you guys were very excited to expand.
Yeah, and just to watch them grow, it's this time of the year because they've been kind of dormant through the winter, and now you're like, wow, where did you guys come from?
Yep, they're all coming back. I've got a pothos that was actually from my late grandmother, and now that I've been watering it, just seeing it flourish is awesome because it came from a relative who's no longer with me. So it's fantastic.
Her energy is in those
in the plant. It is.
vines.
It is. She's doing well.
She's watching you.
Wow, didn't know we were going to get so personal here so early. But Aerys, welcome. I mean, what do you have for us? I mean, kind of take it away. You've got a bunch of great stuff for us today, and no better time of the year than when everybody's really getting ready to focus on their plants.
Right. I try to bring a little bit more of the weird stuff I have and less of the rare stuff I brought last time. Lately, I've been kind of all over the place as far as my collection goes. I was telling Nick, I just recently collabed with the Crystal Plaza here in town. It's right off of Vassar Street, and he's carrying some of my plants. So now that my plant room is kind of empty, I'm like, do I want to fill it with more of the rare stuff? And then I decided to go a different route and start collecting things that aren't so hard to find but are really weird looking. One of them that I've really gotten into thanks to a friend who's starting his own business called Rootbound here in town. It's these little cute kokodamas. I got one of the teardrop shaped ones with an Echeveria succulent in it. It's got this really aggressively purple, almost black look to it. And it's basically soil wrapped around this bed of moss. And it just looks super cute.
Is this something you have to make yourself?
Yes.
Okay. And what's the process with that? Because I've not really seen this before.
So with kokodamas, it actually originated in Japan, where you grab a plant. Normally it's a house plant, and you put the stuff you'd normally put in a pot, and you shape it into a ball with the roots already developed. And then as you work the ball, you also want to add moss around it. And then he used fishing line. Mine fell apart, and I was wondering why. And he told me that any natural fibers kind of break apart really easily. You can barely see his...
Yeah, I can kind of see the lines of the fishing line.
Yeah, fishing line in there. But
so it's like the root mass and the root ball, and then you're just kind of layering this moss over and over.
Exactly.
Do you have to redo it at any point as the plant gets bigger and the root mass gets bigger, or does it...
Normally you do because it does become root bound, but when it's something like a succulent or something that doesn't grow very quickly or has a very small root system, you could keep it in here for quite a while. And he does such a good job that I don't think I'll ever need to do it for any of the succulents I got from him. And the best part about it is that as I'm becoming a more lazy plant parent, you basically just throw this in water. With this guy, I do it once every 3 weeks. Once he feels dry, it's more about feeling it, because when he's very watered, he's pretty heavy. But once you feel it's pretty light, you just dunk it in water, and it's good for a couple of weeks.
So you just submerge this guy until it's nice and damp, and then just let it do its thing. at home, do you have this like on a dish or anything, just so it's not like kind of seeping water on the counter? Is that?
Yeah, he has it on plates. I have it on this. I went to the dollar store and there's this really cute cement candle holder that has this like wire stand, and I just put it on top of the stand, and it just looks really exotic somehow, even though this is like something you could find anywhere. The plant itself, anyway. And this is actually just sphagnum moss, which you find at stores, and it's this like pale yellow brown color. But he has so much humidity at his place that it's like coming back to life.
Absorbs.
Yeah, it looks really lush.
Yeah,
it's really nice.
Is that something that potentially in the future you'd like could dig a hole and just plant that, like transplant outside too?
Yeah,
or
you'd want to cut it out of the kokedama, because the moss has, the reason that kokedamas have this moss cocoon is because it helps preserve the moisture inside of it. With succulents, you don't really want that moss around the roots itself. Just, you could use it as a top layer, but when you have that much moisture retention within the soil, especially with succulents, it
root rot.
Yeah, exactly.
Got it.
With these other guys, they're my Lithops and a couple of Harworthias. One of them is flowering. I use mostly soil with a little bit of just our regular garden mix, and it really helps with drainage and keeping them alive. These little guys are called Lithops, and they
look like Frankenstein heads.
Right? They grow
popping out of the ground, yeah.
Yeah, they grow between rocks, so they're supposed to camouflage that way.
Yeah, I was reading they evolved to look like stones, right? So that they kind of just blend in like drier climates.
Is that because they have a predator of some sort?
No, just that well, actually I should say yes, because in the desert a lot of these animals are like looking to absorb water through plants. So when they hide among the rocks, they're not really noticeable as a water source.
Got it. Okay.
I was also, before this podcast started, you guys were talking about psychedelics, and this is actually one of the plants that I recently learned. I haven't heard much about it. I just recently learned that they have psychedelic properties, and something about them being used in Mexico for some kind of hallucinogenic drug.
Well, there's only one way to find out.
I was going to say, we'll do some research after the podcast and get back to you on that. You know, I do have a question on these because, man, I'll say succulents are so mixed. I got some early and people were like, barely water them. Don't even water them once a week. And the few I did water are just huge and doing great. But then I've gotten a few like these, and I feel like if it just got too hot or too dry or even too wet, they just go limp and die. Is there a good rule of thumb for succulents? Is it really hit or miss? I've had mixed results myself.
Yeah, I have one that crushes it, and the rest, they just kind of fade away, and I never know what I need to do to them. So what are some tips for these guys?
I just recently got good at caring for them. I was always more of the thriving, lush jungle look. And I've always wanted them for the aesthetic, but they were just so hard to keep alive. And I think I finally mastered it when I found out that a lot of places give you succulents with lots of soil retaining properties. So I found that when I transplant mine from the really soggy stuff that they come with into something with a little bit more of a
cactus soil.
Yeah, exactly. Something well draining, and then just water them like regular plants, but make sure they don't sit in water. Mm-hmm. Okay. That's when they really thrive, and they don't really care for low light or even medium light. A lot of people will tell you medium light is okay, but I've noticed that none of mine have thrived in medium light. They're really sun needy.
Okay, good tip. Yeah, because I've noticed that too. People are like, oh, they're low light. You can put it in an office with no windows and it'll live. I'm like, I've never had it make it that far when it doesn't have good light.
Right.
Yeah. But a good point too, that on the soil, you want something really granular with a lot of minerals. So it's just a lot of air and the water runs through it, not sitting in damp soil.
Yeah. And to point on that, when you go to the hardware store, the nursery, there is specific soil for these kinds of plants. So just make sure you're reading the bag before you buy, make sure you're getting the right soil for your right indoor plant.
That's where I'm bad and lazy. I've had like one bag of soil and I pretty much just throw it on top of everything.
Yeah. I'm lazy too, but what I do is I just have 2 bags now. If I'm doing succulents, I just throw like a cup of sand in there, mix it, and then it's like a lot more well draining. Also, I've been forced to get into perlite too. We accidentally bought a bag of it, and it's like a 15-pound bag, so it's huge.
See, a lot of it.
Yeah, and that's
of just perlite.
Yeah, just perlite.
Yeah. That's gonna last you a while for sure.
Do you have a good rule of thumb kind of on like mixing your own soil? Kind of like you said, of like, hey, I'll take about, most of this and then add like a cup of sand, adding perlite and kind of mixing soil. Any good rules of thumb there on like measurement?
I really go based off of feel when it comes to soil, because a lot of the soils you're going to get at big box stores already come pre-mixed like somehow, like whether it's just like a houseplant mix, a garden mix, they're always like mixed already. So even though some say that they are a certain mix, I always check them and like feel for them. Something that is very lush with like thicker leaves and definitely has more of that jungle look, you want it to have more of that mushy feeling where it's got
can retain more water.
Yeah, you can kind of just feel it with your hands where it's got like these weird little fibers in the soil.
Spongy, soft.
Yeah, exactly. Versus when you start to go something more deserty when it comes to cacti. Palms are one of those exceptions where it's just they like that very airy, flowy, gritty soil.
Don't get me started on palms. I can't do them. I kill them every time. I just burn them.
Picky.
And
I think we're in a hard area for them too, because of the moisture and light that they want versus what we get.
Yes.
I've had mixed results as well.
Yeah.
I had one going for a while and then it totally took a turn on me and I couldn't bring it back. It was a heartbreaker.
Yeah, I saw it was on sale at Home Depot. I was like, $20? Cool, this thing's huge. I took it home and I was like, I killed 2 of these. This is going to be the one I keep around. And it fucking burnt in like 2 days. And I was like, oh, crap. Sorry, plant. I just killed you again.
There's the Majesty Palm. That's the one that, like, the hardest one to keep alive. And I was like, I think I'm finally ready to test my plant parenthood skills. And I took one home, and it was one of those things that even in my plant room with high humidity and filtered light and additional, like, artificial light, I was watering it exactly how it wanted, and for every leaf it put out, like every frond, another one would die. So it was kind of like this like perfect balance of it's not getting any bigger and it's not getting any smaller. So I would call that a mild success.
Yeah,
but
it didn't die.
It didn't die. But those tiny palms I was telling you about, I think they're called Bella palms. They start really small, but they can get big. It just takes a while, and those are by far the easiest to take care of. For sure.
Okay. Do they have like a thick trunk?
They don't. They're like surprisingly thin, but they're very versatile. I have a friend of mine who I gave pot, maybe a 4-inch pot to, and it quickly went from a 4-inch pot to an 8-inch terracotta. And he lives in an RV that doesn't have high humidity and doesn't have great windows, and he's like making it work.
That's awesome.
It is.
Because I guess one of the things, like, we're in Nevada, so it's always super dry. So some of the plants, we see for sale here, it's like you should water them a couple times a week just to keep that thing without. Because I will give you a shout out, Aerys. Last time you were here, you gave me an awesome tip of if it's yellowing from the inside out, it's overwatered, and if it's yellowing from the outside in, it's underwatered, right? And I've used that since, as well as using kind of like just the pinky dip in the soil. That has helped me quite a bit.
Oh,
so
good.
Thank you. I've had some stuff that's really flourishing that, like, because before I was lazy, I was basically like, y'all get whatever water you get once a week. This should be easy, right? Well, I started to pay attention more and realize that wasn't just the case. But on those tips, one thing that I struggle the most with, especially as we're getting into like our warm season where the plants really have a great opportunity to grow. We're about to get our sunny season, and the sunlight is so direct and so heavy that I had some plants back when I was in an apartment. I was putting out on the balcony like on the weekends because I was like, oh, I can be here, I can move them. And for some, it really helped, and for some, it just cooked them. But otherwise, I was in an apartment with one window, so it was pretty dark all the time, and I could tell they wanted more light in general. Any good tips on like gauging kind of the light balance that a plant wants? Because I know even, you usually see the sticker, bright light, indirect bright light, whatever, but that
Are
doesn't...
those trustworthy?
Yeah,
I
like
can't
what
tell.
what should I really be looking for?
They are very deceiving. Like, I feel like every plant now comes with that generic, like, same statement, regardless if it needs it
Yeah,
or
right.
not.
Like, they're all
Indirect
the
bright
same.
light is
Yeah.
what pretty much every plant seems to want. And I'm like,
Keep
I
the
don't even
soil
know what that
moist.
means. Yeah.
So when it comes to that, a good rule of thumb, if, like, it's meant to be a house plant specifically, like if you got it directly from the house plant section, most of the time they do require that medium bright light. But what that really means is any light before, in Nevada, I'd say 1 during the summer. Anytime after 1, if you have it in direct light, it's going to probably cook. Anytime before that, before the sun gets really intense, I think your plants will appreciate it and be okay with it. There are some that... So my thing is how... It depends on how thin the leaves are, really. If they're thicker, they can usually take a beating with the sun. If they're thinner, they're going to start to get this, like, brown and yellow edge where they... Or sometimes they have little spots. That's due to the sun. On this Coleus I brought, it's this really weird, like, pink dot that developed on
I
it.
see one right at the top.
It's a tiny little burn. But for the most part, anything before 1 you're okay with. Direct light. And if it's going to be afternoon light, that's when I heard this saying. It's
Like
you
after
want
5 or something.
Yeah. If you want, your plant can see the sun, but the sun shouldn't see your plant.
Oh, okay.
Interesting. Okay. So kind of indirect, just let the light into the room, but it's not shining right on the plant. And for the other part is like that morning light, that morning sunlight where it's soft and it just fills the room is like ideal.
Exactly.
Just
Okay.
warming it up a bit, not cooking it at all.
And I have a room that is like my excess room. And I wanted it to be a jungle because that's where I sleep. But realistically, it gets only afternoon light, but very like aggressive amounts of it. So what I did is I got these sheer curtains and I just pull them over and then like pull all my plants right behind the curtain. And that is usually okay. There's been very rare instances where it like burns.
Yeah, just a good diffusion of the light.
Yeah, exactly.
That's a great tip. So just like a sheer guard and it'll still get some sunlight, but it's just not direct. And
Exactly.
getting burned. That's
Yeah.
great. So this plant you just slid in front of us. This reminds me of another plant that I'm familiar with, but tell me.
Oh, yeah.
Tell me about this one.
Oh,
yeah.
This one is...
This one doesn't come with buds?
No, unfortunately. This one is called a Coleus. It has these really long, elongate... Well, they come in all different shapes and sizes, but they always have this idiosyncratic color vibrance to them. This one has an intense green. It's like a very neon green with a really dark purple. I have one at home that's like intense pink with green. And then I have one that I was going to bring that's looks like a regular green leaf but has like purple freckles. They're always like very poisonous looking almost, but they are shockingly not.
Is this a interior plant? Because it looks like a lot of what does well outside here with like the like just the different like Russian ivies and junipers that we have here that kind of thrive.
Yeah.
But, yeah.
Well, they do sell them as outdoor plants. But they're known as annuals here because it gets so cold in the winter that they die. If you were to put this outside, anything after 5 would definitely burn it still, even though it is okay with being outdoors. It's just one of those plants where they have such sensitive leaves. They
Because
prefer the shade outside.
That's a pretty thin leaf, it looks like.
It is.
Here,
Yeah.
Yeah, it's pretty fragile. But how big would something like... Is this going to be kind of like a full shrub when it continues to grow, or would it stay kind of small?
No, these get really, really big. And a lot of people have them and they kind of elongate. And I always get very scissor happy with these because they like it. The more you cut the plant, the more bushier it's going to be.
Okay, great.
With these guys, I just recently sold one that was about 2 feet wide.
Oh, wow.
And like a foot tall. And it was just like my mother plant that... It started off as like maybe 5 really long strands, and I started to cut them all back. And from each point where I cut it along that same branch that used to be empty previously, there was like 5 buds that started to grow.
And how big was the pot on something that size?
It was pretty small. I'd say maybe 8-inch.
Really? That's it?
Yeah.
How do you know, like, when your plant needs a bigger pot? Like, because some of these plants can, like, have the same pot for years and years and years and still grow a good amount. Like, but I don't know.
Does it limit the plant
it.
size to keep it in a small pot? Will it kill it, or?
It'll give you warnings before it dies. It'll do that yellowing on the edges, and with the overcrowding, it will stop growing as quickly. So you'll definitely notice, like, even during the growing season, they really slow down. They won't put out as many leaves, and if they do, they're smaller. It starts to kill off the oldest growth to make some room. So that's when you start to notice them, but I don't repot my plants until I have to, because they're
really
almost
giving you the signs too.
Yeah,
Okay.
exactly.
How do you kind of know what size to scale into?
It's like 2 inches rule, right?
Yeah, you don't want to go much bigger than 2 inches.
Okay.
Mostly because plant parents have a tendency to overwater when it's that big, because they are like, oh, even though I moved it into a bigger container, I'm still going to water it as I regularly do. And when it's that big and the roots haven't expanded to the full entire pot, what you're doing is kind of like letting it sit. Yeah.
Oh, so you want to water less and tighter to the base of the plant.
Exactly.
When you repot. That's a good tip, because I just brought a ficus tree back that's like about 6 feet tall.
Mm-hmm.
And I screwed up at first, because when I was watering it, I was like, I need to get it all around and do this. And it did not. It struggled through fall this year, but it's back. So
yeah.
Yeah.
Those are really finicky too, though. I'm shocked it's still alive, to be honest.
It dropped a lot of leaves in fall, and it was just through, I cut it, I trimmed it back, I like insulated the bottom of it, and then I just started to water. What I realized is I was watering it too little too often. So I was like, oh, you're just getting a half a watering can twice a week. What it really wants is like a gallon of water every 2 weeks, every week. And I need to put it right on the root base like that. And it's coming back, and just figuring out what kind of light it wants. And it was given to me, and I was like, this plant's been around for 10 years. If I kill it, I'm going to feel really bad about myself.
Kill it within a week too.
Exactly. So it's on its way back. I'm very happy with that. But I learned a lot with that, of like, oh, I need to water it a lot more, less times. How do you know about that? Is there any good way to gauge of like, oh, I should water this with smaller amounts more frequently, or larger amounts less frequently?
You kind of have to combine like your plant knowledge to do that, and intuition of plants. Like you said, like noticing those little changes, like the yellowing from the base up, stuff like that. I know for me, when I had all my jungle and I was like frequently watering and like forcing them to drink every day, what I do is I'd literally hide the plants from myself that weren't that thirsty, so that when I did see them and I was like, oh shoot, you need a drink, and then I'd actually like over water them technically, but then like let that sitting water out, so they're not sitting in that water. But basically what I did is I put my ficus like on the far corner and then surrounded it by a protection of plants that could handle that water. Right now I'm kind of a little guilty of neglect, and I am also okay with it because it's in my room and it's a giant ficus like yours. I got it from this lady out in Gardnerville who got it from like a 4-foot tree to like a 12-foot tree now. Wow. But it's like bending, and I have a vaulted ceiling and it's still like trying to push its way out. But because I've put it in a smaller environment and it's getting afternoon light that's filtered, it's not very happy, but it has a couple of leaves, and I'm like, you're gonna live. Yeah. Like, I'm going to try to make it work.
Now, when you have something that big, what are your tips for keeping it from sagging? Do you do string lines up into like rafters, or that sounds like a project in itself?
It is a project. With philodendrons, what I like to do is moss poles. With anything else, I do sticks normally, like a pretty hard stick, or tying them to the walls is really smart. when they get that big, I always recommend cutting them. I'm being selfish and not cutting it because I like that droopy look. Normally I don't, but it's so big that the droop looks like an arch almost. And I think it's really nice. My cats can't reach it, which is like the biggest plus.
Yeah.
But if you do keep it cut and well maintained, it looks bushier and healthier than just having it kind of like elongate. And then also you're not going to have that really long gap between leaves.
Okay.
I've noticed with the ficus, they're really sensitive to the wall. Like if they barely touch it, they'll start growing away from it like immediately, because no matter how I kind of reposition, I usually have it in a corner because it's big and that's the only spot for it. But I've noticed like I had it in a corner before and I kind of rotated it to see if I could get the leaves going where I wanted, but it just instantly like shifted out away from the wall and the windows.
Okay. Mine is doing that. I was wondering if it was just trying to move towards the light more, or so it's getting away from the corner then.
It's kind of both.
Both?
Yeah. They do like the sun a lot because they are trees, so they're used to handling direct light.
And they have big, thick leaves.
Yeah, exactly. Well, which kind of... Is your ficus the one that has like the basic...
Maybe we're talking to different... I'm fiddle leaf.
Fiddle leaf. Oh, okay.
Different, right?
That one's still the ficus family.
Okay.
But that one does have a lot larger leaves than the ficus that I have. It's the one with the tiny leaves.
Okay.
Mine has like a green almond shaped leaf about that size.
Yeah, exactly. I couldn't describe the shape. My friend from Crystal Plaza always calls it the library tree. He always says, like, thinks of it as the library tree. Cause
have you ever guys been to the Reno Library downtown?
Their
plants are
inside?
insane.
It's awesome actually. It's a pretty old crusty library. It's kind of sketchy, but they have a great like... I don't know if
don't
you call
make
it an
friends at the
arboretum.
library.
No, it's kind of sketchy, but it's beautiful inside.
Yeah.
And they do have like full-grown trees and little beds of shrubs and things.
I voted there, and I was like, "Oh, this is the first time I've ever been in the Reno Library."
For the older millennials
really cool.
on the podcast, it's what you remember the mall looking like when they still had plants in the mall,
the indoor mall. For sure.
Yeah, ceramic tile and a wooden bench and plants.
I went to the mall by Burlington in Reno.
Okay.
I forget what it's called.
Old Town Mall?
Old Town Mall.
Yeah.
Where is that at?
That's the sketchier mall. It's Burlington Coat Factory and
It's right across from the Atlantis.
yeah, it used to be like Hong Kong Diner and like Pirates Pizza.
Yeah. Okay. I consider that a mall.
Yeah. Well, I went in. I've never been in there, and I went in for my first time because on the plant page I'm on, someone's like, "Oh, look at these monstera leaves. It's a huge plant." And I go in there, and it definitely gives me that like 90s movie vibes where
Like
it's got
Stranger Things.
Yeah, it like really opens up, and it's got that wooden staircase, and it's all like funky 90s
like red
style.
tile.
Yeah.
And its big feature is the library. So you can tell it's a Hoppin' Mall because in the back there's like a big old library.
Yeah. It's got plants all around it, but it almost looked vacant. Like I walked in there and there was like the security guard, and I said hi to him, and he like turned the other way, and I was like, "Am I supposed to be in here?"
Don't go down aisle 4, son.
Yeah.
So that actually brings me to a good question though. Places that don't get a lot of light and don't have a lot of windows. I know it's contradictory because like plants need water and light, but what's a good option when you're like, I'm in an apartment with 2 windows? Is there a good recommendation for very, very little light?
There are plants that are specifically okay with it. Snake plants and ZZs. That's like your go-to if you have a pretty dingy place. And I know it's limited, but those are like the 2 that are going to work really best for you. And when it comes to snake plants, there's so many varieties out there. I wish I would have brought some. But they go from anywhere from those like really long sword-looking
like
ones.
sticky ones that are like oval shaped. They're
Yeah.
like cylinders up, and then there's the ones that are flat, right?
Yeah, I've got 2 of the flat ones, and those things I've just heard are unkillable effectively. That actually, because my dad's been in horticulture for years, he told me about how they first brought those over was like when they first went to Africa, they threw them in the belly of like a ship and took them back to Europe, and they're like, well, yeah, it's been in a boat for 2 months and it didn't die. These are great. Let's cultivate these because you can't kill them. Like,
yeah, I had one last time. I told you guys that I had one in my laundry room that has like a tiny window the window itself gets filtered light, and the room itself is this really dark gray, so it doesn't get very much light. But I was like, it's okay if it dies. It just looks really nice there. And I just moved it 2 weeks ago, and it had a baby, but the other leaves are finally starting to die. But that was like 6 months of darkness, and it had a baby, and
Through winter too, not even through a sunny season.
So they're very, very unkillable. The only way to kill them is by overwatering them.
Yeah, they don't drink much.
No. Like, they're like very happy if they get one big drink like once a month.
All right.
Hey guys, Drew from the Appliance Educator podcast here, and I just wanted to take a minute out to talk about our amazing sponsor, Z-Line Kitchen and Bath. You've heard the guests and the hosts talk about this amazing brand and all the attainable luxury that they create right here in the heart of Lake Tahoe, USA. From freestanding ranges to ventilation, dishwasher and microwave, to everything you'll need to complete your next bathroom project, Z-Line Kitchen and Bath is bringing luxury into your next project.
You wanted to share with us everything you brought? Because you got some cool ass stuff here that I recognize the Hoya.
Oh, yes.
I always Philodendron, right? Those tall ones, the tall green ones that have kind of like the turtle shell.
This one?
Yeah.
This is actually similar to that family. They're my Syngoniums. Here, let me grab my other one. So today I brought the Three Kings Syngonium, which is pretty rare, and then the Mojito Syngonium.
I love that one.
They're like, the Mojito has that splashy, darker green.
More splotchy, smaller kind of dots and not as light.
It's really nice. And I have this Three Kings that has like almost like an army print to it. It's 3 different shades of green. There's like a very, very light color, this really dark green, and then a forest green. But they kind of look watercolored if you look at this new leaf.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's very light.
Yeah, it's really it's similar to the Philodendron family, where it's gonna grow those aerial roots on the sides that look like little bumps at first, and they just come in so many like different sizes and colors and leaf shapes. But for the most part, they have this pointy arrowhead look. That's one of their like very popular names, is the Arrowhead Plant for that reason. They grow very, very fast. And
yeah, how far along would you say this plant is?
That one, I got it when it just had these 2 leaves down here, and I've had it for maybe a month, and these are the 2 new leaves that it put out.
It's grown a lot.
Yeah. And it's getting a little leggy because I have it somewhere that's not great lighting.
So it's kind of starting to reach.
Yeah, it's got that elongated look to it.
So something like that. Like, when would you repot that?
I
probably not for a while, right?
Not for a while.
Yeah.
And I'd cut it too, just because right now it's just like one long strand.
Mm-hmm.
I wish
Let's talk about cutting. It's something I want to try. I'm terrified of just killing a plant that's working.
Mm-hmm.
What do I look for? What do I do?
With philodendrons or syngoniums, anything that has a visible aerial root, you want to cut right below that. So, for example, on this Three Kings, what you'd do is you'd cut right below where those little bumps are.
Okay, wow. So you'd cut pretty far back on this.
Yeah, or you'd wait until this next one develops them. It's gonna anywhere where the plant looks like it has a little like elbow
segment.
Yeah, a joint. You'd cut right below the joint.
Okay.
Oh yeah, okay. So like a wandering dude, the same thing. You just kind of just snap it off right at that little elbow joint.
Yeah, exactly. And then you just put it in water, and that little, with the wandering dude, it'll just develop roots right at that base. With everything else where you see the aerial roots, those aerial roots will just develop into real roots.
If I were to cut that too and take that top part and replant it, would that keep growing, or is it pretty much dead?
The top part?
Yeah. So if I cut here, if I took the rest of that I just cut and repotted that, would that continue to grow too? Can you transplant that, or probably?
You'd have to go through. I do it through water.
Okay.
I'd say when you do it directly into soil, there's like a
suffocation kind of almost, or
it's possible, but I feel like I've had very little success with it, so I don't recommend it. And with syngoniums and philodendrons, they're really good at growing in water, especially syngoniums. If you want to, they can even like live in water as long as you provide the nutrients for it. I have one just growing in a gigantic vase, and it's pretty happy.
Yeah, I had some pothos that lived in a water vase for almost a year probably before it even got into some dirt.
Definitely.
I have some of those going right now from a colleague here that I was like, oh yeah, I'll take care of this. Oh, it's doing great. Just put more water in the jar.
Yeah.
Easy.
And easy. You can see when it's running low on water because the roots aren't underwater anymore.
And I've been like afraid to take the plunge too of growing stuff in water, but I heard this recently too, that they were like, especially with roses and things like that you want, like when it's growing, to not have it touch the glass, right? That it's just fully suspended in water. Like especially with roses, I didn't know this, but like a rose tip is like when you cut them to keep them fresher longer, is if that rose stem doesn't touch any part of the glass, the rose will actually stay open. And what I couldn't wrap my mind around was like, well, how do I get it to do that? Won't it just like sink to the bottom? So any tips on like when you're doing something in just water based of like how to kind of support it rather than just like, well, float?
Yeah. I have not, the only thing I've heard about the glass touching is that a lot of people will cut it like straight across. And then if you put it in a like smaller container, like a glass container with water, if you put it directly into the water and it's cut straight across, what you're going to do, it's going to sit flat on that glass, and it's not going to have the ability to absorb it really.
Okay.
Versus if you cut at a slant, even if it touches the bottom, there's still that
just
side.
That smallest point is going to be touching the bottom.
And that's where you want that 45-degree angle cut. Okay.
Exactly. And that's also going to help because if you do a straight across cut here, this part here is going to rot and could possibly infect the rest of the plant, versus if you cut at a slant, it's a little bit more protected.
Okay.
And it's more likely that you're going to have more growth around the base of the plant.
I want to try all this, but I'm so scared. Like
I know it's your babies. Like it's just, I don't want to hurt him.
Yeah. Well, and I'm like,
don't hurt him. He's our friend.
Exactly. He is our friend. And I've put so much work into these guys, but I'm like, I'm ready to experiment more. I've got that much confidence, but I'm terrified because I have just enough confidence that if several of my plants died after me messing with them, I might just go back to plastic.
I found that there was a sale on these things called Arrow Gardens at Home Depot, and they're for growing herbs and whatever other small plants you would use in the kitchen. And I recently started like put cuttings in it, and I've had 100% success rate through that.
Is this one of these? It's like a small light kit over like the plastic.
Yeah.
Because this is where my dad does his garden starts. He does it all inside because we were just talking before the podcast about how we're, it's middle of May and we're having a 3-day snowstorm right now. So it's a great time for everyone who was like, it's April and we've had 80-degree weather to have just lost most of what they just planted. But that's what he does. And like, I've not used one of those yet, but Home Depot, you can just pick one of those up and it's a great place to do early.
Yeah.
I got one of those for Christmas. I haven't taken it out of the box yet.
Oh, really? Yeah. It's amazing. Like if you're afraid of cutting it, as long as it's something with aerial roots and you stick it in one of those little pods that it has, and you just keep the water in there and add a little bit of nutrients as far as like fertilizer goes, I have not had one die in there at all. And it's crazy because I don't do anything, and it just like I got this Monstera. It's a Albo Monstera, which means it's mostly white.
Okay.
And the girl
sounds freaking cool.
It's really pretty. The girl who I got it from had thought she killed it. The roots had all gone black, and it was a 3-leaf cutting, and it was about 4 inches long. And I got home and I cut it in half and then put each half in that system, and at first it didn't do anything. The roots stayed black, but the leaf stopped dying, and then I just pulled it out the other day and both sides have come back to life and are both putting out new growth, and I am completely mind blown and will never like go back to putting it in water again.
That's awesome. I gotta get my hands on one of these now. I'm excited because that's where I want to go next. Is I'm like, if I cut something and plant a bunch of little stuff, I'd love to just like double my collection over the next few months.
It was like it's marketed for like basil and kind
carrots,
of like, things like that. But I didn't even think about propagating with it, so that I might have to do that too.
I started with one, and I just got another one a couple months ago, and then I saw this lady who was selling 5 of them. And I was like, maybe I should get all 5 of them. And my plant room is just going to be like a collection of these growing.
Do you have the ones with like a light rack above it too? Yeah. How much do those usually run?
I got it for like $60, but they usually are like 80 to 100.
Okay.
So it's a little bit of an investment, but if you're growing pretty rare plants, I definitely consider it.
Okay.
Because a lot of people, like, when it comes to rare plants, if you cut it, there's a big risk that your whole plant might die, because most of the rare stuff you're seeing nowadays has some kind of chlorophyll, like lack of it, I should say. Where it's completely white with like a splash of green or something like that, like the Monstera I was telling you guys about. So when you cut off the little bit of chlorophyll it has, there's a possibility it's going to die. For example, I bought my most expensive plant is a $450 Monstera. I thought I could...
Better be a big boy.
It was not. Oh. It was very beautiful. It was mostly white with like a couple splashes of green, and it was like a very minty green. And I was like, I'm going to cut it and make so much money off of it. And then I cut it, tried to propagate it, but this was before I tried my garden. My garden was the Arrow garden was still in the experimental phase, so I didn't think to put it in there, and it died. The other one started to die, and then it had 3 growth spikes, and then I forgot to water it like one time, and now they're all like browning. I was like, no. So it's just this really sad little stem with 3 spikes growing out of it that are browning, and I'm...
A very expensive stem.
Yeah, a very expensive stem.
So last time you were here, and sorry for keep having to say this last time you were here, but sometimes hard drives just die and you can't do anything about it. We talked about using the coffee grounds and fertilizers, eggshells, and like all organic things that you have in your house. And I kind of want to revisit that conversation because it's cool and it's good and it's easy. It's just reusing stuff that you have in your house and take it away.
Like house plant composting is really fun.
Yeah.
With eggshells, it's so hard because like if it's in your garden, you don't really care about the smell. Once you're inside, like I bought fish emulsion because I heard it was really good for your plants. And if you look, a lot of fertilizers have it as like one of their main ingredients. So I was like, oh, it's no big deal. I'll buy the liquid form, water everything, and it'll be fine. And I tested it, and I was like, this is going to smell probably really bad because it was like this brown sludge. And I put it in my watering can, and I like watered a couple plants, and I was like, this does not smell at all. And I started watering everything, and then it wasn't until the next day where like the humidity and sun like kind of concentrate, and then the plant starts to release all of that.
Come home to a fishy stink.
Yeah, it definitely smelled like sewer water, and like I didn't want to go into the plant room for a while. It was really bad. The eggshells were surprisingly not bad.
I've had eggshells in some of my plants that are still in there. They really last.
This might be a stupid question. Should I wash it out first and just throw the shell in there, or is it still kind of some of the egg residue that's really going to do the fertilizing?
You're supposed to leave it in there.
Okay.
That's what does it for the plants, but the smell is pretty bad.
Okay.
What I do with the eggshells is if I'm going to repot soon, I save a couple of the eggshells and then just kind of crush them up and put it in the soil mix.
Okay, mix it in so it's kind of buried.
Yeah, so the smell isn't as potent. And then I think one of my favorite home composting things is coffee. I'm a pretty big addict. And then once those grounds are done, I just like put a little bit in plant, like around my plants as like soil topping. It kind of kills off if you have those little gnats growing. They kind of kill them off a little bit
because it's super acidic. I was gonna think like it.
Yeah, it's got some pH properties that will help certain plants, but you don't want to overdo it with the coffee grounds, because I learned that that's something you can do.
Yeah, over caffeinate your plant.
Yeah, exactly.
Whoopsie.
You never think of. Well, let's get to some more of these, because like this one's been looking at me. I want to know about this. This looks like something I would order for lunch.
Right.
And it looks pretty tasty, but I imagine I don't want to eat it. So what do we have here?
This is a nerve plant. It's actually losing a bit of its pink because I have it in artificial light. When I got it, it was a very, very intense pink. It kind of looks like kale to me.
Yeah, it looks like something that I would want
kale.
on a flat salad. Like,
yeah. And the new growth has this really interesting like little speckling on it, almost like freckles.
Yeah, and like the leaf edge kind of makes me think of like red romaine lettuce or something. Like it has a very leafy
spring mix.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah, it's if you look closely, like the leaf itself is like this pink green, and then it's got this pink veination through it.
Yeah, and it's a nerve plant.
Yeah, nerve plant. I forget this specific species, but normally nerve plants are kind of that teardrop shape with that same line veination. This one I just came across and I was like, I have to have it. And I have the white version of it too, but this just really caught my eye, and it's one of those.
Especially the two-tone leaf, like the tops are pink, but the underside of the leaf is like that bright green. It's got a ton of color.
This is one of the ones that I would definitely repot.
Mm-hmm.
This is one of the ones that's like
so
reaching
that's
its
ready.
max.
That's
ready.
saying I need some more space to grow.
Exactly.
And now, does that grow bushy, or will it kind of flop over and be more viney?
With these, I've noticed they kind of are more of a bush, like ground cover almost.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, so they'll stay wide and low.
Yeah, exactly. But I have gone to places like some nurseries that have the other version of this, where it's got leaves that are like the size of my hand, and I've never seen them before. And I've never even seen anyone locally have plants that big, but it's hard to tell with some of these nurseries if they just cut it from a giant mother plant and what that mother plant might have looked like.
Mm-hmm.
But I have only ever seen the small ground cover type of nerve plant here in Nevada anyway. I also have another pink one back here. It's an Irisine. I cut it
I love
at the
the
very
stems
top.
on these guys. It's so cool.
Yeah, I like this because like I'm not really looking to go into the flower world, but this is kind of a plant that looks like a flower, which I think I would want to go forward.
Yeah, because it's different. It brings a different color to all the greenery that you probably have.
Right. It is very like neon pink and intense.
Yeah, the stem is wild.
Yeah,
like,
it looks like if you put a black light on it, it's going to glow pretty hard.
Yeah, very cyberpunk.
Yeah, exactly. It gives me Avatar vibes. I recently cut it and it's a little upset. You can kind of see that cut at the very top. But like I said, it was getting very long. And ever since I cut it, it has these new growths at the bottom and like new growths at the other older leaves. So I'm just going to keep on cutting it until hopefully it looks something like this.
And it looks like this one, the soil can be a little drier. It looks,
yeah, this one can get a little drier. This one's a little bit one of those like uncommon ones where it's like, I don't think I've ever seen one like this before. And I'm pretty sure it's meant to be an outdoor plant because when I got it, it had more of the intense pink on the leaves as well. And on this new growth, it's only on the like middle area. And even the leaf shape is changing to be a little bit more round. So I'm thinking it's meant to be strictly outdoor, but I needed a pop of color in that plant room to break away from all that green. And it's not upset. So...
No, that's what type of plant was this again?
Irisine.
Irisine.
I forget.
Okay.
I always forget if I pronounce it right or not because it's not very.
Plant names are like the hardest thing ever to read because who knows what language that came from, and it's all just a bunch of letters that don't make any sense put together to me.
Even the snake plant. I've talked to so many people, and they're like, "Oh, mother-in-law's tongue."
Yeah.
And I'm like, what? Like, what are you talking? They're like, no, a snake plant. Like,
as someone who like sells them and like hearing people like be like, oh, do you have this or that? I think one of the things that bothers me is like all these like names for the plants that. Okay, so one of my biggest pet peeves is split leaf philodendron. I have a like personal issue with that name because that could be like 7 of the common philodendron types. And people are always like, oh, that's a split leaf philodendron. And I'm like, yeah, but you would also say this is a split leaf philodendron. And like they're always like, oh no, I'm looking for this. And they're so quick to tell you you're wrong. And they're like, no, that's not a split leaf. And I'm
no,
like,
I just sit
I'm the
here
plant
for
guy.
8 hours a day at this place and another 4 or 5 hours at my place. And you're going to tell me what this plant is, huh?
exactly.
Yeah.
And it's a lot of the older generation, not so much the newer generation,
Damn
but the
boomers.
Yeah,
because
exactly.
they grew up with their plant nickname. And who are you, millennials, coming through, changing the name?
right?
If you can't tell, this is not a boomer cast.
No.
But we accept all boomers willing and listening. Please leave a comment if you think we're too mean to
yeah,
boomers.
let us know if we should be more boomer friendly on the cast. And the best way to do that is to like and subscribe.
Yes, like, subscribe, leave a comment. Just 5-star ratings. Those always help.
Yep.
On to another pet peeve I have. Also, like buying a plant that like I haven't seen before, I always get so mad when I look at the label and it says, "Hi, my name is Common Houseplant," or like, "Hi, I'm a houseplant," and I'm like, "Of course you are. You are in the houseplant section, but what are you?"
Yeah, because for me, like when I'm shopping at the garden center, you know, again, usually your big box hardware store is my common one. And it's like, man, I've had a rough week. Okay, Sunday, take myself on a little date. I'm gonna blow $100 on plants. Let's do it. And that's what I feel like every tag is like, hi, I'm this. I like a medium amount of water and I like medium light. And I'm like, that's cool. I live in Nevada. Is there any way when I'm walking through and just assessing a plant beyond like pulling up an app on my phone or something that like I can tell, is it just based on how healthy the plant is at the nursery? Or is there any other way where I can say like, this is a good plant for me? Any tips?
It's very challenging. I'd say like try to like, for me it's YouTube videos. Like I always like start with a YouTube video and I'm like, I really like this plant that this person pulled up, and then I will literally like go hunt this plant down and it's like a scavenger hunt where I'm like, I need to find it.
How many stores can I go to today?
There was one point when I first started where I like went to 7 Walmarts to find this one plant, and I was like, I have to have it in my collection. But now as I'm like getting more
Plant mature.
exactly, I start to force plants to be house plants. Like this Irisine you see here, I don't even know if this is supposed to be a houseplant, but I know the family it comes from is houseplants. Coleus is another one that's supposed to.
What is the difference, like between an outdoor plant? Because it looks like you're doing successful. Like these guys are fine, and I know they haven't been outside just because they probably wouldn't be alive. So, what? I mean, is it just the section of the store you're buying it in? Is there something to look for? You mentioned leaf shape earlier.
It's actually just how much shade they're willing to tolerate. It's kind of weird to say that, but it's how much time they could spend away from the sun. That like, because some plants, no matter what plant you go for, they can be indoor plants if you provide the right stuff for them, but a lot of outdoor plants require a lot more sun than what's labeled as an indoor plant.
Okay.
So it's just like I said with the Irisine, I just think she'd be happier outside, but we don't all get what we want. So
Some tough love.
but she's not upset. She's just changing and adapting in a way because she's not putting out that.
She's told to.
Yeah, exactly.
It's getting deep here.
So yeah, this is me neglecting my plants. And forcing them into, I feel like I'm indoctrinating plants into being houseplants.
Yeah, because they do cope, right? I've noticed that with my plants. Is like they adjust. They may not have the same color they used to. They may not be the same shape, but they adjust. They adapt.
And a lot of them, like if you think about regions too, because I go to California a lot, what I find there as their outdoor plants are going to be our indoor plants for the most part as well. And also another trick is looking at the zone of the plant. A lot of plants that are zones like 10 and above can be house plants for the most part, unless they require that direct sunlight.
I think we talked about this before.
Yeah, with plant school.
Yeah. Oh, that's right. Yeah.
She told us about the zones for outdoor regions.
Because you can go online and basically see a map, right? And it'll tell you zone. For me, I was like thinking like, so the plant's playing safety, like it's dropping into like a defense on a run play. But oh, that's right. Okay, the zones. What zone are we?
We're a zone 7 here.
Zone 7. Good to know.
We didn't look that up after.
No. Literally, it's like
we had a whole podcast talking about the zone and we never looked it up.
No, it's like you reawakened some knowledge that was definitely buried back in the recesses of my mind.
Right. I mean, if you don't use it a lot, you forget.
Yeah.
Because even myself, I'm like, am I sure I'm a zone 7? Am I sure I can't take this plant home?
I want to be a zone 5.
I know. I really want to be one of the higher zones for sure. But this one, like, I'm pretty sure this one is also supposed to be, I don't remember if I got this as a house plant or not, but it's actually I did, because it's an Alocasia, which is a indoor plant species. I think you see the more common version of this at your grocery store or Walmart.
Sure.
Where it's got those bigger leaves, but it's got like these white lines going through
like
them.
They look like turtle shells, right?
Yeah, exactly. Okay. This one's called the Hilo Beauty. It's got this, like you could see it on the new leaf more. Mm-hmm. It's like a very iridescent camo color.
Yeah, that's awesome.
It is really awesome. This one's gone through a little bit of humidity neglect, so it's a little curled and not as happy as a new one, but they're very hard and finicky when it comes to alocasias. Another one that
one looks tough.
I was gonna say I would love to do this. That looks like exactly what I would kill. You want to see that die? Give it to me today.
Yeah. Ferns. As you could tell, this one used to be dead. Like
so that's a comeback story.
Yeah, this one was in a terrarium.
How? Tell me your secrets.
I got a bunch of glass pieces, and I thought I could do like a cute like terrarium, but not enclosed. Mm-hmm. But I put a bunch of incompatible plants together, and that's really tough to do. And they didn't do well together. This one was dried out because the other plant would absorb a lot of the water, even though it was a desert plant. But even like myself looking back, I'm like upset with myself because this is definitely not desert compatible.
Mm-hmm. So that top tall leaf looks much different than the lower leaves. Is the top one a newer one, or is that an original?
This one would be a newer one. It's also because where I had it with the other plants, this one was in a much better light condition. So it grew a lot thicker and compact, versus when I moved it, it kind of had room and a little bit less light to do what it's doing now. I personally like this bottom part more than this part, but I do like the shape a lot more.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it looks a lot firmer up top.
And you have to touch it. It's like very airy and soft.
Yeah. I had one fern and it did well. And then I was like, let me take it outside and get it some more sunlight. And then half of it died. And then for about a year, it spent, I would say, about a year of undeath. It just was kind of not really living or growing, but not totally brown. Yeah, it was a zombie plant. And then recently I finally gave up on it, just threw it away. But I mean, because I tried to use your tips, Aerys. Like, I've been looking at this of like, it wasn't that it got yellow. It was just that like half of it died. Mm-hmm. And then I was like, do I water it more? Do I give it more sun? But nothing I seem to do seemed to help it. And is there a way to identify when it's a lost cause? And should I just have left it alone? Because
so basically, this one was all this bottom was this yellow color, and I wanted to throw it away, but also these are hard to find in Nevada. Yeah, because most of the time when you do, they're already half dead. Mm-hmm. But I got this guy and I was like, I'm not gonna let it die, and I just kept watering it. This is one of those ones that I think you'd like a lot, just because it actually enjoys that frequent little watering, as opposed to like one heavy watering. They like that nutrient rich, moss filled soil, because they like that soil retention, but also because a lot of the moisture that rises from the soil helps it grow as well, with as far as humidity goes. I'm actually shocked this one is doing so well, just because, one, it came back from the dead, and two, I don't have it anywhere near my humidifier.
Yeah, it looks super lush. I mean, this top part, the green, is so deep.
It is. It's kind of shocking to me too. But literally just go back to your watering routine and then cut off as much of the dead stuff as you can, just because even though it's dead, sometimes that's still absorbing nutrients and taking away from the rest of the plant. I cut quite a bit off of this guy, but I left most of the yellow, and I can't tell if the yellow came back to life or if this is all new growth, to be honest. It's just, ferns are weird.
Ferns are weird.
Yeah, they seem like kind of expert level
Yeah.
plants. They're touchy.
They are.
You got to get your, that's the final boss.
I actually think that last time I came, I brought a terrarium specifically for a Peacock Moss I had.
Yeah.
That was that like iridescent blue-green color.
And those alien things, the alien brains or something.
Oh, yeah,
Yeah.
it's these guys.
Oh, that's the same ones?
Yeah, except
In
these
just
are
different
water.
colors, right?
Yeah.
Too. Yeah, because these can be like blues and grays and almost like a touch of yellow.
Yeah, because you got to camouflage with the rock.
I actually just recently found a supplier that gave me a really rare one. It's still a lithop, but it's round, and it doesn't have that split down the middle. Instead, it has these little dots, like bright white dots going up. It gives me like Pokemon vibes for some reason. I don't know how else to describe it. It just looks like a baby cactus.
We got to get Drew one of those.
Yeah, I was gonna say, gotta catch them
Right.
all. It's a shiny plant. It's just the rarer variant of the plant.
Yeah, those are really cute.
And this is our last one you brought. This is a Hoya. I know that one.
Yeah, you nailed it. It's the Hoya Splash. I believe it's Carnosa. It's got this splashy color to it. The more light you give it, the more of
more
this
dots kind of
exactly.
Oh, okay.
There's one branch that's like almost entirely green, and then the other one that gets light on it that's a lot more splashy. And then I just gave it this little trellis ladder to climb up, just because they are a vining plant.
Yeah.
And I was hoping that one of my Hoyas would flower, just because they have those weird like pom-pom flowers that are really odd, and they smell a lot. I have only ever had one flower, and it was the biggest accomplishment of my life.
This one looks really healthy. How far along is this?
This one is actually one of the ones I saved. When I got it, all the leaves were like this crispy, thin shape, and I was really afraid it wasn't gonna make it, and I just let it soak overnight, and then the next morning they were like all pretty wide again. There's a couple that never came back, like these 4 here in the middle. But with Hoyas, they kind of like that well-draining soil, heavy watering. They're pretty okay with fertilizer. They're like the hardiest. If you don't know how to use fertilizer, I recommend a Hoya. They can handle it.
Or don't use
Or
fertilizer.
don't use it. Yeah.
Exactly.
That's, I think, also something I did to kill my fern.
Oh, fertilizing
was like
it?
fertilizing it. Yeah.
They're really sensitive. Anything with like a thin leaf, any fertilizer mistakes are visible.
It's so funny how plant world, like it's the only like hobby you can take a living thing and like kill it.
Yeah.
Kill it, trim it, overwater it, like just mutilate it.
And you're trying to help.
Yeah,
I mean, you really don't mess with the plant otherwise.
It's fine. Like imagine if you did that with any other kind of, you're a dog breeder or
I
something.
can't do it. I can barely handle the emotions of having the few plants I've killed. I'm not ready to be a parent.
Or a farmer.
No. Or have a pet. I'm just plants for now.
It's tough having cats and plants and like dedicating yourself to both of those, just because my cats specifically like to graze. They just like go into like cow formation and then like go to town on a plant.
That's every cat owner I know who's a plant person too. Is they're like, the biggest thing I have to watch for is that my cats will just come up and just like chew and eat everything.
You gotta get that good spray bottle.
Right.
Don't eat that one. You're gonna regret it.
There's there's cat grass I get specifically for them, and I put it in like a heavy container like this because my cats will literally all come to it and like start grazing like for hours. And like that's the most entertaining thing for them. So any plant that I have that has this, they won't graze on something like this just because I don't think it's good enough for them. But anything like fern wise or even like those smaller leaf things, they just love
anything that looks like a salad.
Yeah, exactly.
So you got to get like a decoy and get the grass in there and be like, that's for you.
That's why I like that tree so much, is it's so out of their way that they
ain't gonna touch it.
Exactly.
Man, well, this is awesome. We went kind of long today, but Nick and I could literally sit here and just talk plants for the rest of the afternoon. So we'll wrap it up here. But Aerys, thank you so much for joining us. Where can everybody find you?
So we are now having plants at 224 Vassar Street, and that's for Crystal Plaza. And then we will be having pop-ups here during the summer through Wandering Wilds. So I'm really excited for both of those things to really expand soon.
And can people get your awesome plant knowledge online?
Yeah, through our social media page. It's Herbology NV, as in Nevada, on all platforms. I have a TikTok for my plants, but I'm so bad at like recording it now.
Tell me about it. Our marketing team was like, you got to get better at TikTok. I'm like, I'm trying.
They make us feel really old because we don't know what we're doing with TikTok.
I just do the videos now and hand it off to them. I'm like, all right, well, here you go.
And they've been doing a great job. So check out Appliance Educator
check us
on
out
TikTok.
on TikTok.
Maybe we'll do a collaboration with Herbology.
Right?
We can get you in
awesome.
there. Well, awesome, Aerys. Thank you for joining us. And we'll definitely have you back because Nick and I could just sit and talk plants all day. So
perfect. Thank you for having me again.
Yeah, absolutely.
Awesome. This has been the Appliance Educator Podcast, brought to you by Z-Line Kitchen and Bath. Be sure to like, subscribe, and follow @Appliance Educator for more tips and tricks and advice to keep your home running at optimal performance. If you have any ideas or topics you'd like to hear on future episodes of the show, leave us a comment. Appliance Educator, signing off.